So welcome everybody. Welcome to Ethical Property, What Are the Issues for Reading? If we've got any tech issues or anything like that, please do flag. We've got someone monitoring the chat box as well. So hopefully we'll pick up any bits and pieces if there are any issues there. We hope you enjoy this event and hope you enjoy undertaking discussions around this type of area, and we're really looking forward to hearing your thoughts. So we hope that you get something out of the event, and obviously we'll be doing a post-evaluation form, so hopefully we can capture your thoughts on that. Next slide please, Willem. Perfect, thank you. So this is the agenda for today. So you can see quite a jam-packed one, especially with 2 speakers. So from now to 7:15, we'll provide the presentations of the topics. From 7:15 to 7:25, we'll all be getting into breakout rooms and be discussing a specific matter. And then from 7:35 to 7:55, we'll come back and have a few minutes each to share the outputs, and groups will be supported by a designated facilitator and note taker. And then from 7:55 to 8 p.m, we'll just wrap up the event. So that will be it. Next slide, please, Willem. Perfect. So as you can see, today we will have 2 speakers. Myself, so just to introduce myself, my name is Verity Leal. I'm the Environmental and Community Coordinator at Hammerson and work at the Oracle specific shopping centre asset in the centre of Reading. And obviously I'm a volunteer with the Ethical Reading organisation. And also thank you so much for joining us, Chris Beales, as well, from the Environment Agency and former chair of the Reading Climate Change Partnership. So lots to cover today. Okay, next slide please, Willem. Okay, wonderful. So as you can see here, I've pulled up lots of different headlines that have been relevant in recent times. There's a huge amount going on in the property world, from Boris Johnson recently announcing the most radical reforms to our planning system since World War II, which include changes to the planning application process and the need for it, for example, from commercial to residential, changes in spaces. There's a lot going on. For example, we've got Grenfell up there. Quality of build is so much more important, is really being brought to the forefront, following, the utter tragedies, for example, Grenfell. Obviously COVID-19, who can escape it? This really is changing how people live, work and play in spaces. And again, other things are, retrofitting, lack of affordable housing, generation rent. There's so much going on in it. So it's, really topical for everyone to share their thoughts, experiences, ideas. And obviously it's, these are all really relevant matters that link into sort of Reading, the current Reading, the future Reading, what we want it to be, which is a place that is, highly desirable. People want to live here, they want to work here, they want to bring up a family here. And obviously as well, there's lots of ties into a really fantastic green future and their ambition to really have a strong climate change vision, which impacts and links into some of these related issue areas. So just keeping on this slide really, so why have we chosen ethical property? Well, Ethical Reading aims to create a positive change in Reading to make it a better place to live and work, and we really want to help drive awareness and encourage organisations to be more ethical in property related matters. And the property area itself, of course, has numerous ethical ties in it. So, it's immediately relevant to ethical Reading. And in terms of Reading, you know, it has a real up and coming brand. It's shaped its future on being green. So we want to help out with this and really ensure that Reading is known for, you know, sort of good quality buildings and those wider CSR related aspects. Ethical property itself came about roughly last year. Ethical Reading did a workshop, which some of you may have attended, which was organised by Litchfields and Shoesmith. And from the outputs of the workshop, that was also taken to the Thames Valley Chamber of Commerce. And, you know, the green steer was, you know, a strong area that was flagged, but we'll talk about all wider areas later. So next slide, please, William. Perfect. So here is a bit of a rough and ready sort of mind map that I created, because I thought, okay, ethical property, what does it actually mean? You know, people have different interpretations of it, so I wanted to try and get that clear in my head. And I really felt, okay, it's, you know, sort of a term used that does sort of promote a property that overall aims to, you know, sort of encompass sustainability, but also, you know, a more just, equitable place for an individual and wider society, you know, to live in. So it'll be interesting later, you know, see if you sort of agree with those kinds of thoughts. So I went back to basics and thought, right, what does this term actually mean to me? And I sort of divided it up into 3 pillars, and you can see this sort of flow diagram mind map. So one was the sort of legal and regulatory side. This was previously sort of known and labelled as the sort of house building, the development, you know, the construction-y side, but we developed it. You know, there's a lot going on in that space. Obviously, you know, you've got things such as the underpinning framework, the Town and Country Planning Act, obviously the relationship between all the key players in the property aspect areas. Then I sort of thought, okay, well, ethical property, you know, there's the sort of house building, legal type side, and then there is the ethical shaping of the Reading landscape. So I felt, you know, through this term, okay, we must always be true to what Reading wants to be. And you can see under that as well, there's a huge amount that already exists of wonderful work, from the 2050 vision to the emergency climate strategy. So, you know, there is a real, you know, sort of clear and current work that's been undertaken in this area. And then sort of finally, there was sort of the sustainability related side, and what's been happening there, codes that related to that, and obviously aspects that fall under the ethical shaping of the Reading landscape also feed into that as well. So I looked into this area, and what we didn't want to do was sort of look at these different things and see what's already been done and replicate it. So we just wanted to see where we could help. And really wanted to see, well, what is important for Reading? You know, what are the issues that people think matter on ethical property for Reading? You know, is it things like the shifts of commercial to residential properties that are happening and will increase happening? Is it more to do with sort of branding, the green picture? You know, what is it? And a key aspect of that really was sustainability as well. So sort of on that note, I'll hand you over now to our next speaker, Chris Beales from the Environment Agency, and former chair of RCCP. So William, if you're okay to go on to the next slide, and I will mute myself and hand over to Chris.
Verity, thanks very much. Yes, and thank you very much for the invite to this. It's great to be part of this this new work that you're putting on, and it's great to see that Ethical Reading have been able to put on so many different events since lockdown, and a lot more planned for the future, which is really good to see. As Verity said, I recently stepped down as chair of the Reading Climate Change Partnership. I'm still a very active active member of the board. It's the end of my 2-year term, and it's been really a very exciting journey for me. Opportunity to build up the climate change partnership and build up capacity within Reading in climate change. On the right hand side of the picture, you can see an image of us holding the Show Your Stripes, which was one of the last things I did as chair of the Climate Change Partnership, which was the photo shoot for the launch of the public consultation on our new climate emergency strategy. So it's great to be there at the completion of what was a really big part of my my chairship, which was the writing of the strategy and helping to build up the Reading Climate Action Network, of which I've seen a lot of the faces on this call today, and it's great to see so many of you are part of that as well. So that's a 5-year strategy for the town. It's worth saying, I've just found out that we've been, as a town, we've been shortlisted for a prestigious MJ award. I'm not actually sure what that is, but looking forward to finding out more about it. But we're one of, I think, one of the 5 or 6 towns that have been put forward for that. So that's really good news, and really good to see that what we've done is being recognised nationally as well. What we're holding, by the way, is not just a pretty barcode. That's the colours of climate change. It's the coolest years on record are in blue and the warmest years on record in red. And this is for Berkshire. It's not anywhere else in the world. It's for, it's for us here. And you can see all the red colours stacked on the right-hand side of that, just showing how much climate change is happening and how urgent everything's getting. So, Willem, if you can move on to the next slide. Just to say about the strategy, there are 2 main parts of our vision for the strategy. It's all pretty standard stuff. One of them is on the need to cut our emissions in Reading, cut our carbon footprint, which coupled with everybody else around the world doing that, will limit climate change. I mean, we've got less that we need to deal with going forward. I drew this graph that you're looking at here based on data from Beales, which was formerly the Department for Energy and Climate Change, showing Reading local authority figures. Reading's done very well. I mean, you can see from 2005 to 2015, we cut our carbon emissions by about a half. And then going forward from that, I've drawn in a glide path down to our zero carbon 2030 target. It's a hugely ambitious target. It's 20 years earlier than you'll hear about the national target, the UK target for net zero 2050. But it is worth saying that we need to set a target like this. We need to be ambitious if we want to stand any hope of limiting climate change to 1.5 degrees, which is the ambition behind the Paris Climate Change Agreement. Even if the rest of the world stick to 2050, Reading needs to show this kind of leadership. If an affluent, high-tech town like Reading can't tackle climate change quickly and can't lead everybody on how to do it, then we're obviously going to have some real problems going forward. The bars in the charts, just to say, are broken down by sector. So I think the ethical property side of things are very much focused around the commercial retail side of the town. I think from the discussions that I've had with Verity and Jill, and probably cutting into landlord properties as well. So in there, you're seeing in the red and the purple some of the direct parts of the carbon footprint for commercial sector. So there's obviously a need to draw that down, and there's a lot in there. There's a lot that we need to do that's around improving behaviour, switching things off through to energy efficiency drives, retrofitting, trying to get our buildings as insulated as possible. to cut the energy consumption, and switching over to renewables as well, so that the energy that we do use is coming from renewable sources. But it's worth saying as well, the other sectors in here, domestic and transport, it's not the business and commercial world need to take that into consideration as well. There's a lot that's influencing can come forward from the business world across to your employees, your customers, and everybody like that. As you work out techniques to bring your own carbon footprint down, that can inspire people to bring theirs down and give people ideas about how to do it, and also as well how you how the business and commercial sector can help the town to switch away in terms of transport needs to move towards new modal forms of transport that move us away from relying on cars and everything like that. How we get our customers to our shops and everything like that is very important, that we try and drive people towards more energy efficient means of transport. So let's switch over to the next slide, please, Willem. So the other wing of our strategy vision is around adaptation. So this is getting us prepared for climate change, and it's not just a backup plan. It's worth saying, as I put in that statement there, climate change is happening already. I've given numerous talks over the last few years about the links between extreme events and climate change, and it's not very difficult to actually grab hold of statistics about extreme events. I've just been thinking about this over the last day or so, and 2019 was the 11th warmest year on record. All of the top 10 warmest years on record have happened this century. I'm just thinking about this year. I mean, we had the wettest February on record, we had the brightest spring on records, and brightest May on record. That's driving a lot of drying influences. This is with 1 degree of climate change. We can expect a lot more extremes going forward into the future. By those extremes, that means more extreme heat, and we've had some hot summers for the last couple of years. There's more intense rainfall. So into the business sector here, I mean, we've got the need to focus on trying to deal with more extreme heat going forward into the future. You need to make sure the workplaces it's not too hot to work, it's not too hot for your customers, so obviously that means that business can't happen. So that means a lot about cooling. It needs cooling, hopefully without air conditioning, which obviously pumps that heat back out into the town, so we've all got to deal with it. So lots of growing trees, vegetation, all of those kind of passive shading things are good, and being very wary of very buildings with lots of glass on them, which I know is something we're going to have to think about as a town. Flooding is also a big concern. As I said, we've got a lot of properties in the town that are at risk from flooding, particularly from the River Thames. And in fact, the whole town is at risk from a business point of view if the bridges, the Merlin Bridge and Caversham Bridge, get flooded out. So we're going to need to think about that. But it doesn't mean you need to be next to a river to worry about flooding, because highly intense summer storms can mean that you get some flash floods, particularly if you've got a lot of tarmac around your property. So what you're seeing there is Reading's first adaptation plan, which is something I'm really proud to have been able to deliver as chair of the Climate Change Partnership when I was doing this. There's a lot of information in here that you can digest to introduce you to the world of adaptation and get you started on some of the risks and everything like that. When the strategy is completed, I'm very much hoping to pick this up and take sort of help build up the conversation to guide the town forward on adaptation, because it's something we really need to really think about over the next sort of 10, 20 years. Okay, so just onto the final slide. I just wanted to leave you with just a final thought here. So, Willem, if you can shift forward.
Thanks. I just feel like we're running out of slides.
Yeah. So just a final thing. I'm not going to dwell on this at all, but just a final thing to just to really sort of remind everybody about the ethical side of this as well. The concept of climate justice. Climate change does impact a lot more on the more vulnerable members of our society. That's not just globally, it's our more vulnerable communities in Reading as well. So it's really important to keep that in mind, and for all of us as people part of the decision-making landscape, and helping to inspire things to really think about that. There's a link to an interview that I did with the wonderful Io Chocolat, who's the councillor in the Borough Council, if you wanted to follow that up. But thank you very much. It's been it's really good to join you today. Thanks.
Fab. Thanks so much. If you want to pop to the next slide, Willem, and I'll blitz through, and what we'll do is just sort of reevaluate some of the timings. So from the work undertaken, I talked to a range of different organisations to find out what they felt mattered on ethical property areas. And so thank you so much to those who provided time to me to chat through what they felt mattered for Reading and what they felt it needed. Next slide, please, Willem. Lovely. So there were lots of key areas that came out of these different discussions with different businesses. So you can sort of read them straight off here, really. So, you know, it's got a fantastic, you know, sort of draw on the built environment. It's got loads of, you know, sort of a real digital focus, drawing in lots of the younger generation. Although obviously to stay in Reading, there is related pressure on that. Obviously, it's a fantastic location. Super close to London, near to the A4, great links up to airports, fantastic attractions, you know, 5 historic parks and gardens, you know, 800 listing buildings, you know, really, really great stuff. But, you know, lots of people shared, okay, it's not quite there on standards of building, high quality housing, and, you know, people are costed out who've lived here all their lives. You know, I'm sure these things aren't, you know, sort of new and unique, but there is sort of a real increase in permitted developments, and you know, people felt that Reading really needed to be more demanding in what it asks for from future developments, and that's the only way it's going to sort of shake things up and change it, because it is so desirable. You know, other aspects, carbon, obviously there's a lot of work that's been shared and that's occurring in this area. But obviously built environment is huge in terms of its carbon footprint. Again, big old issues on loss of energy from buildings, retrofitting. And again, sort of, I'll just pick up a few points on this, you know, COVID-19, you know, people now feel safer outside. It's a crazy, you know, place we're living in at the moment. There's a real higher demand on quality in offices. You know, people really want natural ventilation. You know, in comparison with before, and people want to work from home, they want to use Zoom, you know, and sometimes that might, you know, have an impact on the demand for new offices. You know, lots of people are feeding back these types of comments, and obviously planning needs to integrate these types of factors in a lot better. So that's a huge sort of area of interest. Next slide, please. Awesome. So what I did here is just basically pull together some stats of what I felt the sort of current ethical property related picture looked like in Reading. So these are pulled from the consensus, local plans, etc. So, you know, I think we've got an old presentation in on here on that, but I'm not expecting, you know, for you to swallow all these facts and figures in, but basically get a feel that, you know, we're really good on average salary 34k. That's, you know, really, really good. Obviously these figures on population and, you know, domestic builds were from the last, you know, couple of years ago, and that focused on central Reading. You know, we're doing really better on public transport. And we're the 9th best UK carbon cutter, you know, so in the UK. So, you know, some really, really good stuff happening in Reading at the moment, and we're really, you know, we're moving in the right direction. You know, in terms of like businesses, we've got the 10th highest startup rate in the UK, but obviously how will COVID-19 impact that? If you're okay to blitz to the next slide, and apologies if I'm running through, but I'm really wary that I want to get you guys in breakout rooms and I don't want to be talking at you for too long. So this is the task of what we're going to ask to look at. And so obviously for Ethical Reading to sort of look more at this, you know, sort of programme, we need to understand really what the sort of ideal, you know, ethical property may look like in Reading in 10 years' time. And really through this question, I want to try and suss out, okay, well, what does ethical property mean to you? You know, where are we now? What does best practice look like? So sort of working back from the ambition and the vision of, okay, what would it look like? And then we'll probably work back from there. So I want you to spend the 20 minutes just feeding back on, you know, some of the content really that we've shared. What are the things that have impacted you and the issues? And then kind of, you know, sort of see, okay, what would the ideal sort of ethical property look like in Reading? And, you know, where do we want to be in 10 years' time on here? I've got some headings that you can explore. And again, you know, it doesn't have to be necessarily the green route. It can be the wider piece. So obviously built environment, commercial, retail, domestic switches are all, you know, sort of really relevant and going to impact everybody. So Jill, can I go over to you to share what you guys spoke about?
Well, I've arranged that Ian would do it, and I thought he was going to do a musical accompaniment, but he's just put it away. That's a shame. I was looking forward to that.
I'm honoured.
Off you go, Ian.
That'll teach me not to mute my video, won't it? Okay, so moving quickly on then. So I guess a key conclusion we came to was we needed what we called a visibility plan. I mean, my experience over the years I've lived in Reading, and certainly today, and having listened to Verity and Chris talk at the beginning about what's been achieved in Reading, nobody knows. And if we're going to get momentum behind these things, if we're going to get people to believe it's possible and therefore to add their own weight to it, they have to know that progress is being made. So a key thing moving us towards a fully ethical Reading is to promote what's happened already today. So, you know, whether it, I mean, this is a silly example, but putting that initial slide up on a massive billboard in the Oracle, which doesn't say anything about Reading anywhere, by the way, you know, on that awful big TV screen at Reading Station, you know, things like that, telling everybody, look, we've made fantastic progress. Reading's actually, you know, leading the way in many ways. So you can be proud of that and you can become part of it. So a visibility plan, sort of promoting anything and everything that is a step forward, would be a key thing to building momentum, building confidence, and whatever the things we need to do are to get to that vision, whatever that vision is, they're going to be more successful. They're going to get more backing because people will start being proud of what they've done, whether they've done anything individually or not, you know, but at least they'll say, hey, I'm part of Reading and Reading's famous for this. So that will all help. So visibility plan really is the key outcome.
Perfect, thank you. That was really, really interesting. Wonderful output. So yeah, totally agree. Fantastic. Let's move on now to Gurpreet's group.
Yeah, so we had tons of ideas actually. So first, we started off by thinking, well, what are the characteristics of this vision of ethical property 10 years down the road? And there were a number of things that came up. First thing was, actually, we want to balance quantity and quality. So there was a feeling that actually we've gone for quantity in terms of bills rather than the quality of the bills in terms, particularly around sustainability. So, you know, but also it relates to infrastructure and transport and leads on to congestion and so on. So the whole thing around, well, can we actually grow sustainably? And so managing that in some way. It's not easy, but, you know, that's one element of the equation. Tracy came out with a really interesting point, which is when she thinks about ethical property, what she's really condensed it down to is this notion of responsible landlords in particular. At the moment, when you think about properties that are rented, whether they be commercial or residential, there really is no incentive for anyone to improve those from a sustainability point of view. There's no incentive for the person that rents or leases the property, and there's no incentive for the landlord because the person who's renting pays. There's no incentive for the person who's renting because they move on, from time to time. So any investment they make is not recouped. So that needs to be looked at. There needs to, there's a scope there for policy changes at a national level in particular around that. A series of carrot and nudges is important. One area where we felt we can definitely improve on, and this must be part of that vision, is fair access, irregardless of income and so on, to green spaces, because we know that has a huge impact on well-being of people. In terms of transport, one tangible thing that can make a big impact is just secure bicycle storage, because bicycle theft is a big issue in town. People are starting to cycle more. We saw the numbers, they're up 54%. If you want to increase that, then we need to provide secure storage for people who take their cycles in. Another thing that came up was actually people are using electrical devices, things like scooters more. Perhaps not in Reading, but Brad mentioned the US. I've seen this in Paris as well during lockdown. A lot of people using scooters. So thinking about lanes, safe lanes that separate out the different types of traffic is very, very important there. Last but not least, people often think about moving to electric vehicles to reduce particulate pollution. That's true. It does help in that regard. The challenge, though, is you still have the same amount of traffic. So you still have congestion. So you have the noise and so on that's associated with that. So, a whole bunch of different things. Yet another element is, when people are trying to get on the property ladder, is ethical property. When we're thinking about that, needs to encompass ethical practices by people involved in that. So when they're dealing with people who are buying or renting and so on, they need to be handled in an ethical way. And of course, if you're a youngster, if you're young and you're trying to get on the property ladder, actually doing some of the sustainable fitting, particularly if they're buying an older house, which they're doing up, is not cheap. So incentives around that is an important aspect. Sorry, I've taken more than 2 minutes.
Wonderful, really interesting points there. Yeah. Thank you. Brad?
So Brad was in my group, yeah.
Oh, is he? Oh, okay, fab. Antoine, can I go over to you next, please?
Yes. Thank you very much. I'm glad in our group we had some professionals and professional planners, and also some, users of space. And therefore, our discussion was moved straight towards ethical property. What is it? And actually, we thought about ethical property in Reading. And we would like to thank Verity for the data she's put together. But there was one element of it which was missing, I think, is the fact that in Reading, there are still about 10,000 people on the council's waiting list, which is absolutely not right. And we took the ethics discussion on that angle, and at the end of a very interesting discussion, which started with the, the measurements and the benefits and the risk rewards or benefits of the efficiency of an efficiency energy consumption. We moved away from that, and really we thought that an ethical property in Reading in 10 years' time will have to be definitely an affordable home, and also a home which it's not necessarily owned, but it has to be affordable. There shouldn't be no sofa surfing in 10 years' time in Reading, and we should know that. I mean, we should publish that. We should be ahead on that level and on that ground. We agreed with the discussion in Gurpreet's group about the refitting of homes. This is where we obviously support the idea of policy making to make it affordable for the homes. And at the end, we are convinced, or our group was convinced, that homes and property should be considered as anything like an investment. It should be something which there are obligation to make an efficient use of it, supported by policy, whether it is at local level or at national level. We had just a quick, just for fun, I want to share the new move to convert offices into inhabitations, or a place where people live, in just dreaming. And I share a dream, which is to see Green Park turning into the hamlet of the residential care hamlet of Reading. So that's it.
Oh, perfect, thank you. And I'm very aware on timing, so I just whizzed through our group. Yeah, it was a piece around, okay, is it a property or is it the wider property sector? And yeah, I mean, there's a lot in relation to, sort of the ethics side of here, landlords behaving ethically, monitoring housing related decisions, with some great ideas in relation to, ethical property being a term and concept, and really sort of looking at this and looking at how it needs to be attached to regulation, and then that, what is it we want everyone to buy into as part of this concept, and when we buy into it, it's because of A, B, C or D, and if it's missing, then sort of why is it missing? So almost have sort of a code of ethics for these related things, and then we can sort of really work out what we want to get there from. And we had some really interesting points on some of the other areas that are happening in France, where they're actually sort of I think we mentioned that they've sort of made outdoor heating illegal, so again looking at things from across countries. And obviously transport is a massive related piece and has a sort of big issue on an impact on our streets, etc. So Willem, if you just pop it to the next slide, please. Thank you so much. Sorry you're rotten on feedback, so I'll get that in more detail for your facilitators. And awesome. Okay, so we'll pop the slides up on ethical Reading. And obviously following this, you've shared some wonderful ideas, really, really interesting. So we are asking if you're interested, if you enjoyed it, if it's like really close to your heart, if you want to form an independent group to join us in sort of articulating, a vision, an ambition, some ideas, please do let us know. I've popped my email on there. So, if interested, please do sort of jot it down. It's beales@theoracle.com. We'll be sending a survey out after this event, so please do complete it. Only takes sort of 30 seconds. And thanks so much for coming. Really, really appreciate it. And hope you've enjoyed it, had some interesting discussions. And as I say, if you're interested in further developing, please do email me and let me know. And yeah, we're finished bang on time. So thanks so much, everybody, for joining, and enjoy the rest of your evening.